I am the legitimate daughter of the Wang family from Lingya. My status is esteemed, comparable to that of a princess. From a young age, I was groomed to be a matriarch, destined to become the esteemed daughter-in-law of the Xie family in Qin County upon reaching maturity. However, on the eve of our wedding, my betrothed, Xie Qilong, fell passionately in love with the steadfast daughter of a condemned traitor, and without a second thought, he chose to break our engagement at any cost. I became the laughingstock of the entire capital, forced to flee in disgrace. When I re-emerged before the public 3 years later, it was at the first birthday banquet of Xie Qilong's eldest son. Yet, the once ardent heir of the Xie family, who had once risked everything for love, now gazed at the woman he had painstakingly married, the daughter of a traitor, with indifference, coldly questioning. Such a disgrace, how can you manage a household? Upon the utterance of those words, the entire hall erupted in an uproar. Should the young mistress of the Xie clan lose her authority over the household, it would be tantamount to being forsaken by her husband. Henceforth, whether within the confines of the inner chambers or in the capital, she would find it impossible to establish herself. Many of the ladies present instinctively cast their gazes upon me. After all, this young mistress was the one whom the Xie family had deemed worthy of marrying, even at the expense of discarding me, a daughter of the Wang clan. The Wang family is by no means a humble lineage. We are the illustrious Wang clan of Lingya, capable of influencing the tides of the world, wielding immense power. To witness such a significant sacrifice for the sake of a legitimate grandson's wife being so trampled upon is undeniably lamentable. Lady Xie, seated beside me, remarked with a hint of schadenfreude, my brother has finally reached his limit. Over the past 3 years, the Lin family has made numerous blunders, causing my brother to lose face time and again. She cast a sidelong glance at me and seemingly casually said, Wang Shan, had you become my sister-in-law back then, things would have been different. I interrupted her coolly, Lady C, tread carefully with your words. She fell silent, somewhat disgruntled. The surrounding ladies and young misses whispered and pointed fingers at the Lin family, yet Xie Qilong did not utter a word in defense of his wife. This was reminiscent of the time I had frantically sought Xie Qilong for answers after learning of my broken engagement. He had merely shielded his beloved behind him, allowing others to mock me without restraint. At that time, I had become a pariah, shamed by the broken engagement, an object of scorn for all. Now, with my father having succeeded my grandfather as the new head of the Wang clan, he grandly brought me back to the capital. And the very people who once derided me now sought to ingratiate themselves with me, turning their ire upon the vulnerable Lin family. Yet, I did not feel a sense of satisfaction. A woman's fate ought not to be dictated by a man's whims. I should not have endured what I did then, and she should not suffer the same now. The true fault lies with the fickle man. I glanced at the young woman standing amidst the crowd, her expression one of discomfort. It was hard to reconcile her with the resolute maiden she once was. Back then, not even death could compel her to lower her head. Now, merely a seating mishap at the banquet could so easily shatter her. Such a feeble woman, paired with a heartless man. I had been driven to the brink by these two. This farcical drama ultimately concluded with the hurried arrival of Xie Qilong's mother. Aunt Xie is the most competent matriarch I have ever encountered. She is clear-headed, rational, and decisive, maintaining an undefeated position in the inner quarters. Yet, I noticed a few strands of silver threading through her hair, suggesting that these past years have not been easy for her. She soothed the guests and escorted the daughter-in-law who had caused the embarrassment away, preserving the dignity of the Xie family. As she passed by me, her eyes briefly flickered with inscrutable meaning as she nodded. I returned the gesture. She patted my hand and affectionately remarked, "It has been years since we last met. Shaner has grown so much. You must visit the estate soon, and we shall have a good talk." I could not help but scoff inwardly. Had it not been for the uproar surrounding my broken engagement back then, this amiable aunt would never have spoken a word in my defense. I politely nodded, and she hurriedly departed. Meanwhile, the Lin woman kept her head bowed, too timid to meet my gaze. She appeared as disheveled and uncomfortable as I had been when I hastily left the capital years ago. Upon resuming my seat, Lady C gently nudged my arm, and I followed her gaze to find Xie Qilong staring at me with a complex expression not far away. Compared to 3 years ago, He now appeared much more composed and dignified. However, the look he cast upon me was laden with implications, lacking in innocence. It evoked memories of the moment I first discovered his change of heart. 3. In the 5th year of Chen Kong, the forthright Lin Yushi incurred the emperor's wrath with his candid counsel, resulting in his family being exiled to Jiaozhou. Renowned for his integrity, on the day of his departure from the city, he was met with a throng of citizens bidding him farewell. The youngest daughter of the Lin family, Lin Aoxue, publicly questioned the heavens thrice, championing her family's honor, seeking justice for the loyal minister, and calling for clarity in the world. Each word dripped with blood and tears, shocking the literati of the realm. It also left a profound impact on my fiancé, Xia Qilong. That day coincided with Xia Qilong's return to the capital from his travels, and I had arranged to meet Lady Xi outside the city to welcome him. At that moment, I beheld him beneath a tree, playing the guqin, bidding farewell to the Lin family with a rendition of Guangling San. His gaze lingered on Lin Aoxue, brimming with an unspoken tenderness. Xia Qilong, the young master of the Qinjun Xia clan, was renowned for his cunning and wit. Under the gaze of such an ethereal figure, even Lin Aoxue, though proud, could not help but blush. The ambiguous feelings between them were evident, even to me from a distance. In that instant, I suddenly realized that the boy I had grown up with, my childhood companion, seemed to be slipping away. Indeed, upon his return to his residence that day, Xia Qilong remained restless. That very night, he set out with the Xia family's private soldiers, pursuing after them. Reflecting on this, I could not help but smile in derision. I recalled asking Xia Qilong on the day I left the capital, how could he dismiss our years of companionship for merely a few fleeting encounters with Lin Aoxue? A soft hue appeared on his usually aloof face as he replied that such an initial meeting was enough to be etched into one's memory for a lifetime. Yet now he offered neither respect nor honor to his wife. The affections of a young man truly dissipate like smoke, vanishing in an instant. I felt a wave of disillusionment and resolved to depart early. Had it not been for my mother's ill health, I would not have attended the banquet in her stead. My status has changed dramatically. Even those who still whispered about my broken engagement dared not voice it openly. My early departure would elicit no criticism. Yet, the servants of the Xia family led me to a secluded corner. Xia Qilong stood quietly in the corridor, turning to face me as he heard my footsteps. I halted in my tracks. 4. The afternoon sunlight cascaded upon him, gilding his figure. I was transported back to the time when he was the tender-hearted boy who had nurtured me. My elder brother had always enjoyed teasing me, often igniting my ire. But it was always Xia Qilong who avenged me, beating my brother until he begged for mercy. Throughout my childhood, the flora in my garden and the treasures in my private vault were almost entirely sourced by Xia Qilong. Alas, the young man I once admired has transformed into the one before me, now a stranger. Noticing my silence, he gently inquired, "Why have you ceased to call me brother?" It was as if a mere phrase could erase the painful past. I replied with a calm demeanor, "Young Master Xia, let us not jest, we have both matured." I had yet to extend my congratulations on the Xia family's new grandchild, for my father was indeed unable to attend today. Otherwise, he would have personally come to offer a cup of fine wine. However, the truth was known to both him and me. My father, upon assuming power, had not concealed his disdain for the Xia family. Let alone a mere birthday banquet, he might not even attend the Xia patriarch's longevity celebration. Yet, the Xia family was undoubtedly in the wrong regarding the matter of the broken engagement, and they remained unaware of the number of private soldiers the Wang family possessed, rendering them cautious. The current emperor also hailed from a prestigious lineage, permitting noble families to train private armies. My father had spent 3 years in obscurity before seizing control of his grandfather's power with the troops he had discreetly nurtured. The strength my father now wielded was formidable enough to instill trepidation in other illustrious families. Xia Qilong sighed heavily. "Ashan, I was wrong back then, causing you undue suffering. But I have regretted it. After you left, I knelt at your home for 3 days. Yet neither your father nor your brother would reveal your whereabouts. Many of my guards are still out there searching for you. Ashan, I truly know my wrongs. Will you forgive me?" I silently scrutinized his features, attempting to discern the truth within his emotions. Yet, all I perceived was an abundance of deep affection and anguish. I smiled faintly. Brother Xia, do you truly comprehend what transpired at the time of the broken engagement? Such a significant matter. How could you remain oblivious to its profound impact on a woman? You could have graciously invited your ancestors to engage in a cordial discussion with my family. Yet you chose to enter the residence accompanied by private soldiers, inciting my grandfather with your words. It was as though our Wang family clung obstinately to this union. My grandfather, deeply humiliated, immediately commanded me to reflect upon my actions in the ancestral hall. Unaware of the underlying circumstances, I was forcibly taken there. On the third night in the hall, overwhelmed by anxiety and trepidation, I was unexpectedly visited by Zhang Mama, who served my grandmother. She, under my grandmother's orders, urged me to take my own life to preserve the Wang family's honor. The white silk tightened around my neck in multiple loops, and I shall never forget the ghastly visage of Zhang Mama. It was my father willingly relinquishing all our family's assets and promising to send me away, who ultimately saved me from the brink of death. Reflecting upon that harrowing moment, my gaze fell slightly and my breath grew lighter. My father and brothers devoted themselves to my well-being, yet I was truly foolish, for even as the carriage was set to leave the city, I still desired to confront you for an explanation. I hurried to the Xia residence in search of you, but how did you respond to me? You shielded Lin Aoxue behind you, fearful that I might cause her harm. Furthermore, to sever my entanglement, you refrained from defending me when others mocked and belittled me. In truth, what fault had I in this entire affair? The engagement was not of my choosing, and the dissolution was not my decision either. I was merely a young girl, naive and earnest, who learned a profound lesson from the man I held dear. Xia Qilong's eyes were filled with guilt and sorrow. Yet he bore no surprise. I gave a self-deprecating smile, realizing he was aware of everything. Indeed, as the young master of the Xia family, he could not possibly remain oblivious to the sordid affairs of the capital. I offered him a respectful nod and spoke evenly, thus, Xia Xiong, please refrain from uttering any further words of forgiveness or the like. Between us lies a chasm that cannot be bridged. This matter shall forever remain unresolved in my heart. I sidestepped him and made my way to the Moon Gate, only to have him call out to me, Shan, whether you believe it or not, I never intended to harm you. Since my earliest memories, every step I took was according to my ancestors' designs, believing that life should unfold in such a manner. When Lin appeared, it was as though I were a prisoner granted a glimpse of daylight. She defied convention, unafraid of societal judgment, daring even to question the heavens. I eagerly seized her presence. However, on the day of the grand wedding, I learned of your departure from the capital. How could such a delicate young lady survive alone in the world? I fell gravely ill, memories of my youth flooding back like a raging fire against my heart. It was then that I realized the grave mistake I had committed. His voice grew softer, and I ceased to listen, departing without another word. It was merely a litany of evasion, a feeble attempt to shirk responsibility. Were it not for ulterior motives, I would not have deigned to exchange a single word with him today. Upon returning home and greeting my mother, I proceeded to my father's study. I recalled how, in my childhood, my father often spoke of a day when my siblings and I would establish our own families, and he would take my mother to seek a secluded paradise. He had no desire for power or prestige, merely wishing to wander amidst the mountains and rivers, listening to the whispers of the pines, and live his life freely. Yet now, for my sake, he had taken up authority once more. At that moment, my father was not engaged in official duties, but was instead gazing with a furrowed brow at a collection of priceless jewelry. Upon my entrance, his expression brightened. Shauna, come quickly. Your father is selecting headpieces for you. He stroked his beard, exclaiming with a hint of exasperation, tomorrow's palace banquet requires your grand entrance. You must give those gossipy women a reason to be envious. His troubled demeanor belied that of a head of a noble family. I approached and rested my head on his shoulder. He muttered, what sort of conduct is this? You are now a young lady. Even your father must exercise some decorum. Yet, he affectionately patted my head, reminiscing, when you were born, you were so small that the physician declared you a weak preemie, unlikely to survive. I held you day and night, my heart in turmoil, fearing that a moment's negligence would mean your loss. Eventually, you grew into a plump child, laughing joyfully upon seeing me, like a fortunate little sprite. You cannot imagine how delighted I was. Shanair, your father feels no regret, whether in service or in seclusion. The foremost concern is your and your siblings' safety and happiness. If you thrive, your father shall retreat into blissful obscurity with your mother. If you suffer, your father shall brave the thorns to safeguard you. This is my duty as a father. Moreover, when your grandfather and uncles decided to forsake you, the bonds of father-son and brotherhood within my heart were severed. Therefore, do not burden yourself with guilt. Tears welled in my eyes, a blend of gratitude and sorrow. Had I been born into another family, I would not have survived the annulment of the engagement 3 years prior. What merit do I, Wang Shan, possess to deserve such a loving family? After conversing with my father for a while, I returned to my own courtyard. Upon entering the inner chamber, I beheld a young man clad in red seated by the window. He had yet to reach adulthood, yet every gesture exuded elegance, though an air of unruliness lingered about him. Upon seeing me, he snorted disdainfully, voicing his displeasure, returning so late. Have you encountered an old acquaintance and reminisced about past affections? His expression remained impassive, yet the hand casually draped over his leg clenched into a fist, revealing his inner tension. I chose to ignore his presence and proceeded to change into my regular attire behind the screen. The young man, startled, stammered, "Why you? How can you be so bold?" He then swiftly leaped out the window. I could not suppress a laugh. The weight in my heart lightened somewhat. 3 years ago, leaving the capital for the north, I traveled light but endured a difficult journey. My spirit was weary, and tears accompanied me nightly. Yet midway through, the young man stubbornly blocked my path, insisting on accompanying me. He, weary from travel yet familiar with me, had clearly pursued me from the capital. In that moment of desperation, I grasped this lifeline without hesitation. Throughout the most arduous years, he remained steadfast by my side. He shared my hardships during our travels and stood with me against the challenges posed by my kin upon returning to our ancestral home, guiding me step by step out of the shadows. 3 days later, at the palace banquet, I appeared before the assembly in resplendent attire, eliciting even praise from the usually stern censors. The stern expressions on my father and brother's faces nearly cracked, their tails wagging in delight. As soon as we were seated, my mother was surrounded by a throng of relatives, inquiring about my engagement. She maintained an air of composure, yet her entire presence radiated vitality, a stark contrast to her earlier pallor. I found it amusing, refraining from interrupting my family's moment of triumph. After all, for 3 years, they had endured the burden of gossip due to me, and their frustration had been palpable. As I poured myself a drink, a slender figure suddenly obscured my view. I glanced up to see Lin Aoshue standing gracefully in the moonlight, her presence captivating and full of vulnerability. Upon meeting my gaze, she seemed to summon great courage. "Lady, may I share a cup with you?" I nodded slightly, and she visibly relaxed, taking a seat beside me. The surrounding women discreetly dispersed, yet their attention remained focused on the two of us, as everyone was as curious as I was about what this young mistress of the Xia family would say to me. Lin Aoshue first poured the warm peach blossom wine into my cup before speaking with a poignant tone. 3 years apart, and you remain as radiant as ever. I still vividly recall our first encounter. You appeared like the resplendent full moon, unattainable. The crowd speculated what kind of suitor would be worthy of your grace. It was only upon meeting Qilong that I understood the meaning of a suitable match. I drained my cup of wine, maintaining an unaltered expression. What occupied my thoughts was the events of last autumn, when I found myself in Liangzhou with another. In the vast desert, that person, with a water skin at their waist, was unwilling to grant me even a sip. I was overwhelmed with anguish, desperately attempting to snatch it away, until I succumbed to exhaustion and fainted. When I awoke, I was already rescued. It dawned on me that we had long run out of water. That individual had filled the water skin with sand, providing me with the hope to endure. In the depths of the night, they nourished me with their own blood, gifting me life. Reflecting on this, I bowed my head and smiled. Lin believed I was moved by her words and ceased her reminiscing. She took a deep breath and earnestly implored, "My lady, your status is esteemed, and your future is bright. Could you refrain from taking away Qilong? Our child is still young and cannot be separated from their mother." My good mood was instantly shattered. "Madam Xia, you should choose your words with caution. You just remarked on my lofty status, and indeed, it is true. Xia Qilong could not reach me before, and even less so now. Lin's current demeanor genuinely disappointed me. Could it be that the inner chambers truly have the power to diminish a woman to such a state? In a moment of sentimentality, I could not help but voice my thoughts. Madam Xia, the source of your unease should not be I. I too once wandered in confusion as you do now, thinking the world was vast and no one would shelter me. But someone once told me that a woman's loyalty and courage should not be confined to the inner quarters. Subsequently, I embarked on numerous endeavors I once dared not even imagine. Observe closely, the glory of a family is merely embellishment. My name, Wang Shan, will ultimately be remembered for my own merit. If we can uphold our own strength, we shall no longer fear the judgments of others. Rest assured, madam, I, Wang Shan, shall never turn back. At that moment, a loud clatter echoed behind us, prompting both Lin and myself to turn. There stood Xia Qilong, pale-faced and at a distance, seemingly having overheard for quite some time, the wine cup in his hand having fallen to the ground. It was then I realized that the music that had been playing had ceased unbeknownst to us, and all eyes in the grand hall were upon us. Xia Qilong quickly regained his composure, stepping forward to seize Lin's wrist, harshly commanding, "Come with me." He then pulled her away. I had known him since childhood, yet had never witnessed such a display of disarray, which compelled me to steal a few more glances. But upon turning, I found my gaze locked with that of the young man in red seated at the head of the male guests. Amidst the assembly, he was the only one brazenly adorned in red, appearing unfazed. His cold eyes were fixed upon me, and for reasons unbeknownst, I felt a strange sense of guilt wash over me. Once the banquet commenced in earnest, Xia Xinyang returned to the seat beside me. As the legitimate daughter of the Xia family, her place was naturally meant to be alongside mine. However, at this moment, her expression was complex, devoid of the previous attempts at flattery. Wang Shan, have you and my elder brother truly reached an impasse? My mother has stated that if you are willing, the position of his legitimate wife will always be reserved for you. She will take Shang'er to raise, ensuring it does not affect your life. In the future, your child will be the heir of the Xia family. I regarded her with a sidelong glance, genuinely vexed by the Xia family. Eldest Miss Xia, do you know why? In our youth, you called me 11 Yang, yet upon my return, you unconsciously refer to me as Wang Shan from the outset? It is because my status has changed. You no longer dare to treat me as casually as in our childhood. So, as the sole legitimate daughter of the Wang family, why do you Xia people presume that I would willingly lower myself to become a mere secondary consort? Is it due to the grievances you inflicted upon me 3 years ago, casting me into despair? Xia Xinyang's face flushed with embarrassment, her mouth opening and closing, at a loss for words. At last, she retrieved a seal from her sleeve and handed it to me. Wang Shan, this is for my elder brother, who wishes to meet you in the bamboo grove after the Emperor and Empress leave. There are matters he wishes to discuss with you in person. I accepted the seal, my fingers tracing the distorted characters at its base. It was a practice seal from when I first learned to carve at the age of 10. The first batch of flawed seals gifted to my father and elder brother, along with Xia Qilong. The abrupt end to the engagement had indeed left loose ends. Should the Xia family produce certain letters or items, it would undoubtedly tarnish my reputation. I truly needed to meet him to reclaim those matters for security's sake. However, I wondered if some individuals would be displeased should they learn of my private meeting with Xia Qilong. Contemplating this, I discreetly glanced at the young man in red across the way, only to find him gazing dreamily at the dancers in the center of the hall. As the banquet reached its midpoint, the Emperor and Empress finally approached hand in hand. I rose, a slight smile gracing my lips, joining the others in a bow. The Emperor, having recently recovered from a serious illness, appeared less than robust. His health might not endure for long. As he promptly delved into the matter at hand, last year, during the great victory in Liangzhou, I mentioned that 2 individuals traversed the desert, facing death to deliver the general's message to the reinforcement camp. At the time, these 2 were absent from the capital, and thus the commendation was delayed. Now that they have returned, I shall no longer keep it concealed. He stroked his beard and spoke gently. Jiao Lang, Wang Xinyang, please step forward. Amidst the astonished gazes of the assembly, I, along with the young man in red, who was Xia Qilong from the Lanling Shao family, stepped forward to receive the emperor's decree. The Xiao family was not only a prestigious clan but also part of the current royal lineage, and Xiao Qilong was the ninth prince. Such a figure had concealed his identity to accompany me in exile for 3 years. The emperor's face radiated kindness as he glanced between Xiao Qilong and me, stating, "The Huainan flood disaster, your efforts to assist in the dam repairs have stabilized the hearts of the people for the royal family. During the Jizhou snow disaster, you traveled north from Lengia to deliver grain, comforting the victims, and in Liangzhou's assault, it was you 2 children who risked your lives to seek aid, breaking the siege." He turned to my father, a hint of pride in his voice. "Wang Xian, you have raised your daughter well. However, my Jiao Lang is commendable as well." My heart tightened, fearing that the next words would lead to a marriage decree. With unresolved grievances against the Xia family, such a union would disrupt my plans. To my surprise, my father proudly responded, "Your Majesty, then grant my son the title of a princess, would you?" The emperor chuckled, shaking his head in amusement. Among the court officials and noble families gathered, only my father dared to speak to him so. The emperor refrained from responding, turning his attention to Xiao Qilong, asking, "Jiao Lang, what is it that you desire?" No sooner had he spoken than a commotion erupted from the Xia family's table, causing me to glance over and discover it was Xia Qilong again. He had spilled hot wine on his hand, and the attendants were frantically attending to him. Yet, his gaze remained fixed on me, brimming with unmasked fury. It seemed he had just realized that my 3 years away had been spent with Xiao Qilong, and the reason he could not trace my whereabouts was due to Xiao Qilong's concealment. Our eyes met for a fleeting moment before I averted my gaze, only to catch a glimpse of Lin Aoxue, seated behind Xia Qilong, her face frozen in shock. I offered her a slight nod, only to hear a cold snort from beside me. Taking advantage of this leave as a barrier, I feigned nonchalance to brush against Xiao Qilong's hand, prompting him to regain his composure and respond to the emperor's inquiry. "I have not yet thought of anything, father, so let us leave that for now." Thus, that night, I emerged as a meritorious figure, a princess with lands and authority. From then on, in public and private, no one dared to belittle me. In a few days, once the imperial edict was announced, my name, Wang Shan, would resonate throughout the realm. After the emperor and empress departed, the young lords and ladies began to gather in small groups to admire the lanterns. I rose and made my way toward the small bamboo grove. Midway through, I was suddenly pulled into a rockery with great force. A deliberately lowered voice seethed, "You truly intend to meet that Xia Qilong? Wang Shan, do you even have a heart?" His hand gently caressed my wrist, only to suddenly take on a tone of grievance. "Before returning to the capital, you clearly stated that you would never repeat past mistakes." I wrenched my hand free, displeased, and retorted, "Xiao Qilong, do you find the dancers captivating?" Xiao Qilong paused, his eyes filled with confusion. Imitating his demeanor, I let out a cold huff and spoke with a tone laced with sarcasm. "Pray tell, did you watch so intently moments ago that you could spare a moment to eavesdrop on my conversation with another?" Xiao Jiolong resembled a ruffled dog, exclaiming, "Wang Shan, do not slander me so. I have never laid eyes on that wretched dancer. My gaze has been solely upon you from beginning to end." After speaking, he turned his head away, visibly uncomfortable. "You, young lady, should cease diverting the topic. You are absolutely forbidden from seeing Xia Qilong. I will not permit it. If you wish to go, you must step over my corpse." He once believed I was enamored with a gentleman as refined as Xia Qilong, always suppressing his true feelings in my presence, feigning elegance and indifference. This was the first time he displayed such unreasonable behavior. Perhaps he felt embarrassed himself, for he would not meet my gaze. I sighed inwardly and nodded. "Very well, if you wish not to meet, then so be it." With that, I turned to leave, intending to retrace my steps. In a fit of urgency, Xiao Jiolong reached out and pulled me into his embrace. Upon seeing my startled expression, he quickly released me. "Shauna, I am not trifling with you. It was merely a moment of desperation. Please do not be angry." We both stood there, cheeks flushed and at a loss for words. After a while, he asked softly, "I shall have a servant escort you home, and in a few days, I will take you to the Shishan Zen temple to fulfill our vows, if that pleases you." I nodded and hurriedly followed the servant away. The thought of Xia Qilong slipped my mind entirely, as I could only feel the warmth lingering where he had touched my waist. On the following morning, I made a grand entrance to the city moat with my maid and guards in tow. It was the season of vibrant spring, with many people venturing outside the city to enjoy the blossoms. At the riverbank, I personally burned old items, while my maid stood on the embankment explaining to passers-by that I, the daughter of the Wang family, was disposing of gifts exchanged during the betrothal with the Xia family. If Xia Qilong had any sense of shame, he should handle his old belongings as I have. If he lacked shame, and were to produce my personal items for malicious intent, I would have grounds to defend myself. Such commotion soon attracted the attention of the Xia family. However, to my surprise, it was Xia Qilong himself who arrived. Always fastidious, he still wore the robe from last night's banquet, and his complexion was pale. I furrowed my brow. Could it be that my absence from our appointment had caused him distress? Xia family guards dispersed the onlookers, standing watch at the riverbank. Xia Qilong approached me. I calmly bowed and addressed him, Xia Xiong. I intended to inform you that the Wang and Xia families have been intertwined for many years. In our youth, lacking understanding, I bestowed gifts upon you. May I request their return? It would be beneficial for both of us. He gazed at the burning letters in the brazier, which were my childhood learning materials, written by him. The open box contained trinkets he had once gifted me. In our youth, he had been genuinely kind to me, selecting many gifts personally, even learning how to craft women's accessories for me. Xia Qilong closed his eyes, his voice choked with emotion. Aishan, our companionship has spanned not just a day or two, but 15 years. Do you truly believe you can simply let go of such a bond? I was taken aback. You're aware that we have known each other for 15 years? How dare you bring up our past? His expression was pained as he recounted, at that time, I truly believed your family adored you so dearly that the broken engagement would only confine you to your home for a time. I thought to endure this hardship for you, and once the storm passed, I would have my mother acknowledge you as my adopted daughter, ensuring you would have a dowry from both the Wang and Xia families, securing your future. As the heir of the Xia family, he rarely explained himself to others. Yet now he desperately sought to convey that he had never intended to harm me. Yet he struggled to find the words that would convince me. Xia Qilong, helpless, solemnly said, Aishan, I truly regret all that has transpired. Will you trust me once more? This time, I offer you the entire Xia family as a pledge, simply asking for another chance. He stepped closer, his voice grave. I will give you my most treasured possession. From now on, in my heart, no one shall rival you. Will you not pause a moment longer to look back at me? He lowered himself, nearly pleading. How vividly I recall that year when I was 12. When the two great families, Wang and Xia, formalized their engagement in the presence of the clan elders. Though I was still naive, I knew I was destined to marry Xia Xiong, and my heart was filled with joy. As a girl of noble birth, I had basked in the glory of my family since birth, with marriage being my only fate. In the absence of choices, how fortunate I felt to wed the brother who had loved me since childhood. From that moment onward, I eagerly awaited the day I would come of age. Yet, as I longed and hoped, I was instead cast into despair. Perhaps a lingering resentment resided in my heart, prompting me to ask softly, Xia Xiong, was it not your family that sought to marry me? Why then, did you change your mind, leaving me to bear all the consequences? Do you know how my father, mother, and brother have fared these past 3 years? Why has your family been allowed to humiliate me without restraint? Xia Qilong clutched his chest, crumbling under the weight of despair. Aishan, may I repay you for all that I owe? Yet you know my methods. What I, Xia Qilong, desire will undoubtedly belong to me, and none can stand in my way. In the 8th year of Chengkong, 3 years after the broken engagement, the Xia family finally revealed the truth behind the annulment with the Wang family. Xia Qilong took all the blame upon himself, transferring half of his family's assets to me as compensation. The matriarch of the Xia family personally visited the Wang family to express her apologies to my mother. Such actions placed the current lady of the Xia family, Lin, in a highly awkward position. Not long after, the renowned Lin Aoxue, celebrated by scholars, was falsely accused and sent to the family shrine. At that time, I was admiring the flowers at Shishan Zen Temple. The 9th prince, standing beside me, remarked sarcastically, Still relying on the Xia family for a marriage proposal? The Lanling Shao family is now a top-tier clan. Can we afford to lose wealth? Indifferently, I plucked a peach blossom and inhaled its fragrance. Xiao Jiolong swiftly snatched the blossom from my hand, expressing his displeasure. You, young lady, are far too carefree. That Xia Qilong is ruining his reputation, and I suppose you are touched by it? I noticed that your father's attitude towards the Xia family had improved significantly. You even wanted me to quietly send Lin out to the capital. Shaner, tell me the truth. Have you softened towards Xia Qilong? I shot him a glance and indeed saw the unease in his youthful eyes. Before others, he exuded an air of invincibility, yet he lacked confidence in my presence. But he truly is a good man. When the engagement was first annulled, I was unable to eat or sleep. He took me hunting and fishing, showing me the hardships of common folk, teaching me the value of life. In the ancestral lands of Langia, when I was scorned and derided by my kin, it was he, as the 9th prince of the Shao family, who commanded them to treat me kindly and assured them that one day he would bring me back to the capital in glory. During the floods in Huainan, when I was besieged by disaster victims, he rescued me amidst the throngs. In the snow disaster in Jizhou, when I went in the mountains with the officials to search for survivors, he found me in the icy wilderness after I tumbled down a slope. When Liangzhou was besieged, I was entrusted by my father's friend, the governor of Liangzhou, to seek reinforcements. It was also Xiao Jiolong who resolutely accompanied me, guiding me through the desert. After enduring heartbreak, I refused to hold him back any longer, repeatedly throwing off his grasp in my obstinacy. Yet he stubbornly pursued me time and again, rescuing me from peril. With my hands behind my back and a smile in my eyes, I asked, Xiao Jiolong. I pondered deeply, and before leaving the capital, I had never seen you. When did you come to harbor feelings for me? His face flushed, and he nervously stammered, What do you mean? Feelings? I know not of what you speak. I raised an eyebrow, truly unaware. I thought some people rushed out of the capital, leaving everything behind upon hearing of my troubles. TSK, what a waste of emotion. I have already persuaded my father to enter the palace and agree to the emperor's decree of marriage. Alas, I must hasten back to prevent him. I depart leisurely, while Xiao Jiolong swiftly catches up, trailing beside me like a large dog. What marriage decree? Shaner, clarify this. Are you referring to our union? Have you consented? Have you truly given your approval? Moreover, what do you mean by being deeply moved? Wang Shan, you must cease and elucidate your words. Are you genuinely touched by my pursuit from the capital? More so than by the revelation of Xia Qilong's self-destruction of his reputation? I do not respond, yet my steps are imbued with an inexplicable lightness. That spring, on the official road, a young lord in crimson gallantly intercepted my carriage, leading me to believe I had encountered a rogue. Yet, he turned out to be an old acquaintance from the capital. After 3 years of companionship, we find ourselves back in the capital just as spring arrives. How could one not be stirred by such a serendipitous reunion? The last time I beheld Xia Qilong was when I personally visited the Xia residence to convey joyous tidings. His Majesty has issued an edict, granting me the honor of marrying Xiao Jiolong in the coming spring. Xia Qilong's countenance was one of shock, devoid of his previous composure. This final blow, I must deliver myself to leave no room for regret. Brother Xia, my prior feigned indifference was merely to evoke your guilt, to leave you unguarded. I had intended to sever half of your family's fortune in return for your initial refusal to marry me. Yet you have unwittingly presented me with half of your estate, thus relieving me of the effort. Xia Qilong, our fates have now concluded. Let us not meet again. I turned away, but Xia Qilong, his eyes ablaze with desperation, pursued me. Ashan, you shan't marry another. You cannot escape this. Do not harbor such illusions. Yet he was halted by the imperial guards. His voice gradually softened, laden with imploring. Ashan, do not be so heartless. My heart aches. Please assist me. He understood that the Xia family would never permit him to oppose the royal lineage. Neither the Xia family nor the aristocracy could allow such a transgression. As I slowly exited the Xia manor, memories of our childhood companionship unraveled in my mind like pages of a tome, each one I tore away with my own hands. The little brother who lifted me up after my fall at 3, the young tutor who frowned as he taught me to write at 5, the boy who crafted a peachwood hairpin for me at 7, the young lord who vowed at 12 to cherish me for a lifetime, and the Xia family's young master who trampled my pride at 15. Henceforth, all ties shall be severed. Outside the Xia residence, the young lord in crimson awaited impatiently by the carriage, as though poised to storm into the Xia household at any moment. Upon seeing me, he exhaled in relief and extended his hand. Hurry, there is still time. Let me take you outside the city for a ride. I smiled and placed my hand in his palm. Xiao Jiolong, when did you come to harbor feelings for me? You little vixen, how could you be so utterly shameless? When exactly? I pondered, unable to recall, and he pressed on. Then what shall you do? I shall tell you plainly. It was during the spring banquet years ago when you stumbled in the peach grove, and I kindly helped you up, only for you to soak my sleeve with tears. Ever since, I have been unable to forget you. In another spring, when we reunite atop the mountains of our homeland, how delightful that shall be. The tale concludes here. Thank you for listening. Until we meet again in the next story.